Welcome back to the channel, guys. So today we have probably one of the most requested videos that I have ever gotten on this channel, and I'm finally going to put it out. All right, it's going to be this one and then a video on Operation Red Wings, which I promise, guys, it is coming soon. But I'm trying to do these videos justice. All right, so if I imagine most of you who watch the channel have already, have been following the story, but for those of you who haven't, right, the Navy SEAL community loves to tear each other down, and one of them in particular really has said some intense allegations against pretty much every prominent SEAL in the SEAL community, and that is Navy SEAL Eric Deming. Okay, he's been on a bunch of different podcasts telling stories about, again, multiple Navy SEALs, Jocko in particular, Chris Kyle, Marcus Luttrell, Slabinski, all of these guys, right? So what I wanted to do is, I didn't want to do this video until I really had time to sit down and comb through and like surgically analyze these podcasts. So that's what I finally did, all right? So we're going to have a lot of clips for you today. We're going to go through each one of the clips and talk about a bunch of different things, and then come to the conclusion of whether, from my perspective, and for those of you who may be new to the channel, I'm a retired Green Beret, and I spent over a decade in Army Special Forces. My perspective is someone who understands the things he's talking about intimately, and the special operations world and how it all works very deeply as well. Okay, so for complete fairness, all right, everybody who's a regular on the channel knows that I am pretty critical of Navy SEALs, all right? I don't ever attack any of these Navy SEALs personally. I don't care about that. I've been critical of the Navy SEAL organization and sort of leadership failures, and also the way they sort of conduct themselves in public. Not all of them, but a few bad apples, okay? So if the things that Deming says seem to hold credibility to me, my personal bias is going to lead towards agreeing with him. Okay, so just full disclosure, that's sort of the lens that I'm coming from. Okay, that doesn't mean that's necessarily what I'm going to find, but just full disclosure. Okay, things we're going to talk about, right? We're going to talk about all of the really big claims that he's made. We're going to go over defamation law, because a lot of people don't understand that, because Jocko hasn't sued him, and they think that's like an admission of guilt. So we're going to go into actual law, okay? Because I actually just covered in one of my law classes defamation law, so I have a much better understanding of that now, so I can get it to you guys. We're going to go over his claims about Chapman, his claims about Jocko, his claims about Chris Kyle, his claims about Marcus Luttrell, his claims about Operation Red Wings, okay? And I'm going to let you guys know up front, there's some things that I know he's most likely telling the truth about, and there's some things I know that he 100% is either lying about or wrong about, and we'll get to those, okay? So, yeah, so who is he, right? He kind of just burst on the scenes out of nowhere, made it seem like, the only reason he's coming on podcasts is to out bad apples, okay, sure. So he was a Navy SEAL for 20 years, in the Navy for 26 years. Pretty impressive career, okay? I'm not here to bash on him personally, and I'm not here to disparage or defend Jocko, Kyle, Luttrell, none of that. That's not the purpose of the video. The purpose of the video is for me to let you guys know what makes sense that he said and what doesn't. So what's likely true and what's most likely fabricated, okay? And I think I've got a pretty good handle on that, having gone through this and really combed through it. All right, so let's get into what he's claimed. Okay, so there's a lot, and I can put now. He's made claims over a few different podcasts now. The one I pulled most of these clips from was from the Team House podcast, which I've been on. Great podcast, great dudes. You guys should definitely check them out. All right, so, and you'll see in the videos, the link to their channel is there. Dave and Jack are awesome. Again, I've been on the show, loved my time on there. Great dudes, okay? So I'm just using their podcast for reference, because I believe it was the last one he did, and he kind of told the same stories in every podcast, except for in the Team House podcast, he told more stories. All right, so that just made it easier to pull most of them from there. All right, so what has he claimed, right? Basically, Jocko is a failed leader for a bunch of different reasons. Jocko murdered an unarmed non-combatant. Jocko let Chris Kyle murder innocent civilians. Jocko is a coward. Jocko got his teammates killed knowingly. Chris Kyle murdered innocent civilians. Slabinski knowingly abandoned John Chapman. Marcus Luttrell ran from the fight and ran from his team. The SEAL team, that SEAL team Luttrell was with, died to only 8 Taliban combatants. And Operation Red Wings was covered up on how the helo was shot down. Okay, there was actually a bunch more than that, but those are the really big inflammatory war crimes, accusations of essentially murder, things like that. Okay, so heavy accusations to be throwing around. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to watch a clip because we have to understand where he's getting his information from. Right? That's very, very, very important when we're analyzing what people say about things that happened in the past. All right, so let's first roll that clip, and then we're going to talk about it right after. All right, here we go.
Jocko wasn't going out, so another senior guy that goes to him says, "Hey, your guys are calling you a coward because you aren't going. You're sending them out, and you're not going out with them." So Jocko says, "Well, I'll go out." He goes, "And I'm going to shoot the first." And he said, "Sand," and he used the N-word, "that I see." And it just shows you what his intent was. So he basically tells that. Go ahead.
I just want to. I just like who. I know you were getting this information from somewhere, but I also want to be very cautious about sort of like he said, she said, because you didn't hear him say that, correct? So like I just want to be very.
There's only one other guy in the office with him at the time.
Yeah.
All right, guys, intense clip, I know, and not a lot of backstory to that to really understand unless you've watched the video, but the entire purpose of that clip, and we're going to have other clips that address what he says in here, the entire purpose of that clip, props to Dave for being the only podcaster who challenged him on this. Their Team House was the only ones who I think did this well, the podcast well. Challenging him on where are you getting this information from. Nobody else really challenged him on this. And that, as he says, right, no, I didn't hear it myself. No, I didn't see this myself. Oh, a person I know saw this. Okay, so very important to understand. No claim, there is absolutely no claim that he has made that he personally was an eyewitness account to. Everything that he is claiming against these people is from third-hand knowledge, or third party has told him. Very important, okay? If you're going to make huge accusations and you didn't see or hear them yourselves, you better bring receipts to the party, all right? And we're going to go over whether he did or not towards the end, okay? But again, the importance of that is he knows as much as I do. Why? Because it's basically what he's heard as rumors from, as he said, about 10, 15 times. Well, it's well known in the SEAL community. It's well known in the SEAL community. The issue with that, as we start to jump into this, is for those of you who never spend any time in special operations, kind of going to be hard for you to understand this. Special operations community, especially active duty, is the most drama-filled, like more than a high school girls' locker room rumor mill you will ever be a part of. Like the level of pettiness, rumor throwing is insane. Okay, so immediately for me, coming from that community, saying that you didn't see any of this stuff firsthand, that's a rough start to the credibility. Okay, but again, that doesn't mean it's not true. So next thing, and I've seen this in the comment sections on all the podcasts all over the place, and that is that because Jocko put out a response video to this. I don't really care about Jocko's response. That's not the point. Again, the point is what he's saying. Does any of it make sense? People have saying because Jocko hasn't sued him for defamation, that is an admission of guilt. And I want to make it very clear as we go into defamation law, that is absolutely not true. Okay, A lot of people don't, and me personally, I didn't understand defamation law correctly before this. I did a video where I thought Jocko should have sued him, and now that I do, again, I've been educated on, professionally educated on defamation law in upper education. That's not how defamation law works. Okay, so we're going to go over that right now, just to squash that whole thing. Okay, and I can promise you, because you don't come out and say these things without talking to a lawyer. So Deming was informed that he basically is free to say that he is based off of these things. Okay, the way defamation law works, the plaintiff, right? So the plaintiff in this case would be Jocko suing the defendant who is defaming you, Deming. It's the burden of proof is on the plaintiff. You have to prove 4 things, okay, to the judge, the jury. You have to prove that the statement was in fact a false statement, okay? So if what Deming is saying is true, obviously there's no defamation case, okay? You can't sue for defamation over something that's true. All right, 2, it has to be publicized. And by that, people seem to think you have to put it in writing, you've got to say it on a podcast. Yes, that would be publicized, but as far as the court's concerned, you have to have only said it to more than one person, more than one other person than, obviously, the one person involved, okay? So, yes, going on podcast counts. That is a check. All right? Has it caused injury to your reputation? I would argue maybe not that big for Jocko, but yes, I would say there's definitely a case to be made. There's been an injury to his reputation based off of this, all right? Not everybody believes it, but some people do. All right? And the last one is fault and malice, okay? So you have to be able to prove that the defendant knew that it was false and still decided to defame you anyway, okay? Here's the big problem with that. 1 and 4, okay? You have to prove it was a false statement. You have to prove they knew it was a false statement. Jocko, it is impossible, based off of this situation and the stories being told, because they're in war in a foreign country and nobody saw, it is impossible for Jocko to prove that this didn't happen. Why? There's no footage of it. There's no, right, audio recordings of it, okay? And he has to prove that Deming knows this is false, right? Impossible to do, okay? So Jocko literally, even if this is 100% false, right, there is no way for him to empirically actually prove that it is true or false, okay? So understand that. I'm sure Jocko, he has lawyers, and I'm sure his lawyers just let him know, hey, no matter what, doesn't matter. We know this is false, but we literally can't prove it because it literally happened in Ramadi. Okay, so again, squash that. So don't put that in the comment section. It's going to be a waste of your time. As again, I'll just tell you, we covered defamation in the video. All right, so yeah. So and again, I'm guilty of this too, guys. I didn't actually understand that myself, and I thought for sure if this is crazy lies, to sue him. Well, unfortunately, defamation law is a little bit more complicated than that. So hopefully that cleared that up. Now, let's jump into things you're going to set, right? So first we're going to start with the story about Chapman, okay? And move into Jocko Kyle on the backside of that. So let's watch another video.
So when we start talking about Roberts Ridge and, some of the Demneck guys that roll their eyes and be like, why are you rolling your eyes about, and they start telling me the real story about what kind of happened. Just like, yeah, Slab left the guy, left Chapman up there. I'm just like, so I'm kind of hearing it, as far as on the side of, but, it doesn't come public for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. Well, Tim Szymanski's, instead of them holding him accountable for that debacle, and then all the lies that they tried to cover up later on, as far as that he does, he advances his career and he ends up at Group 2 as a Commodore. So now I'm a CQD instructor. I'm at, which my CO is over at the center on the West Coast, even though I'm on the East Coast. But I got Tim Szymanski, who is the Commodore of Group 2. And next thing you know, as far as, and I didn't know that he had failed so miserably as a leader at Demneck and was kind of pushed out of Demneck and pretty much said, you can go away. You don't really fit our need here. And we didn't know that Slab had left Chapman behind, and that he was on the wall of the Rock of Shame at, over there, that for all what he had done wrong.
All right, so I'm sure most of you know the story about Chapman, right? and being abandoned by the SEALs. It's a famous story now. Okay, I'm not here to dispute anything he's saying here because there was an investigation done and it's been proven. Okay, so yes, he's telling the truth. As far as him knowing about it beforehand, it gets a little shaky in the story, right? Where he's mentioned the time period he's talking about here is when he was a CQD instructor, and guys were coming back from war and told him about the truth of what happened. Okay, which is interesting. He says it at the start that all these guys told him about the truth of Slabinski abandoning him, and then at the very end of the same clip, when he gets into talking about Tim Szymanski, who is important later in the video, who is the commander at the time, appointed commander of CQD, who's somewhat involved in with Slabinski on this. Then he says that he didn't actually know any of this happened. So it's like, it's a really weird clip in that how he was told that it was happened, but then he says that he didn't know it actually happened until later, and it was, I don't know, really odd way of telling that story. But yeah, I mean, that is what happened, okay? So I'm not here to call him out on that. I would just say he's telling the truth as far as he knows it, and we all know it, okay? So pretty good start to how he's doing in the videos so far, okay? So we'll see if it keeps going. Now, that's all that really came out from that, and again, it's pretty surface level, right? The next thing we're going to talk about is Task Force Bruiser, okay? And now understand, I saw there's another podcast where a couple Marines were on as well who corroborated his claims. I combed through that as well. All right, again, two Marines who, let me really make this clear, okay? Two young Marines in combat in Ramadi are going to have no access and placement to information on what a SEAL team commander is doing in the area. Let's be very clear about that. So they're talking from third-hand knowledge as well, okay? So more third-hand, I heard type of stuff. So slow down. Like, we're not just automatically going to believe somebody because it got corroborated by somebody who also heard the rumors, all right? Not to say Task Force Bruiser wasn't fucked up, not to say that any of this isn't true. It's just to say these aren't credible sources, necessarily, okay? So you have someone with an eyewitness account who said, I saw Chris Kyle do this. Well, we got to chill out a little bit, all right? But again, I'm not here to say I wasn't there. So I'm just here to say, do the stories make sense? All right, so let's jump into his accusations against sort of Chris Kyle, which kind of coincide with Jocko, and then we'll jump into Jocko after that. So let's check it out.
Then I start hearing about Task Force Bruiser and everything that kind of went on with Task Force Bruiser. And at the time, I didn't know it was Jocko and those guys down there in Ramadi. I just knew that it was SEALs doing daylight patrols and daylight raids, and they're getting good SEALs killed. And we're just like, what the fuck is going on with these guys down in Ramadi? And so at the time, I didn't know exactly who it was or what was going on. The West Coast instructors, as far as, they're getting those guys that went through their training, they came back off that deployment. They're telling all the stories about Chris Kyle shooting people that he shouldn't have been shooting, as far as people off of bikes. He was trying to get a body count. So Chris Kyle goes off the rails. He works directly under Jocko. Jocko is basically pushing him out there because Jocko, the platoon that Jocko relieved, had great success doing DA missions, night raids, and basically Ramadi was a much safer place when they were there. Jocko comes in and he has to try to beat their record. So the only way that he thinks he can beat their record is basically getting a body count.
Kill count.
So he tells Chris Kyle, basically, get a body count. So Chris Kyle starts going out there and to get the numbers that Chris Kyle ended up with. He shot a lot of people he shouldn't have shot.
All right, so here's like the first big accusations, right? He's basically accusing Chris Kyle of war crimes, shooting innocent civilians, and then also sort of implicating Jocko into that, right? I've seen a lot of talk about this of, talking about daytime operations or nighttime operations. Yes, we very often operated at night. I did a shit ton of it myself. But in the early days of the war, especially when at this point in the war, like it was super, super common to be doing daytime operations. Okay, so very odd thing to say here. And like movement to contact, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Anybody who was in the Marines, everybody who was in the infantry, SF, in early days of war knows, like, that's what we did. We did movement to contact. You go out, you wait to get shot at, you get in a gunfight. So him making it seem like this is some weird thing that they never did, not the case, okay? Then the other thing, like, and again, I'm not saying this isn't true, but like this whole thing about they were trying to get a higher body count to beat the team before them. Maybe this is a SEAL organization thing. Maybe some SEALs could weigh in. But like in SF, nobody gives a shit about this. Like no commander is like documenting numbers of like, oh, we got to get a higher number of body count than like the team that came before us. Like you're focused on way higher strategic and operational level things than like a body count, especially at a company or a company commander's level that Jocko had been at. I mean, again, maybe this is true, but like we're sending Chris Kyle out there to get a higher number of bodies to report back. Maybe, guys. I don't know. This is where I start to go. I don't know. Sounds a little like, again, somebody who was upset with Jocko was embellishing on some stories a little bit, maybe. Not to say, again, there's not maybe some truth to it, right? There's always his truth, her truth, and then the truth is somewhere in the middle. But again, this is where the story starts to go. Now, again, there's a lot of talk about Chris Kyle and the things he was doing that, you know, there could be some truth to this, but kind of a weird way to present it. Okay, and also, again, the daytime operations thing is if that's like trying to get your guys killed, like that was a normal thing we were doing in SOF, right? So right? That's kind of a wash. All right, next, we're going to get into specifically his claims about Jocko, because he really has gone after Jocko more than anyone else, right? The things he said about Kyle, and we'll see about Luttrell and Chapman, are really like surface level that like you could hear off any internet podcast, where he's really tried to drop bombs nobody's heard before is on Jocko. Okay, so let's watch the next clip as he really gets into his claims against Jocko. Let's check it out.
So Jocko's in country. Before Mark Lee gets shot, or before that situation happens, SEAL Team 6 operator goes to Jocko, says, "Hey, they know that when you're leaving the wire. You got your Punisher patch, thing on your body armor. They know who you are. They're IDing you when you leave. They're following where you're going to. Your guys are putting up a huge American flag, when you get out there, because you're supposed to be in a sniper hide. You're exposing who you are, and you're going to get guys killed doing what you're doing." And Jocko tells this senior SEAL Team 6 operator, "Fuck you, I'm taking it to the enemy."
So yeah, his claims here is that Jocko knew that the enemy knew who his guys were when they were going out. He gets warned by a SEAL Team 6, the senior SEAL Team 6 operator, not to do it, and he does it. Again, guys, understand this. We're talking about the U.S. military in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? They know who we are. We are the 6-foot-plus, giant, tattooed, huge bearded white dudes in the region, okay? They already know who we are. They knew who we are at all times, everywhere, okay? So this is silly. This is just super silly, and that some DevGru operator would tell him, like, you can't go out because they know who you are. Dumb, okay? So this is where the first one where I get into of his claims where is just, it's like, it sounds completely fabricated, okay? From the again, the standpoint of this doesn't make sense, because this is just the way the war worked for us, all right? We didn't blend in. The enemy knew who we were, right? We're in American military vehicles, okay? So this one again, and then again, this is where this is rumor mill, right? When you hear stories that Jocko told a SEAL Team 6 chief or whoever to go fuck himself, right? This is like one of the most like rumor milled special operations stories you would possibly hear, okay? The odds of that being what happened is like 0.0001%. There may have been a conversation, a little bit of an argument, right, that the rumor mill and telephone game spiraled out into that. But again, like, Jocko isn't necessarily doing anything here that special operations didn't do for the entire war, which was go out during the day, movement to contact, things like that. We did it in VSO ourselves all the time. Okay, so no, this first story is a big X on likelihood of reality for Deming. Okay, not to say that didn't happen, but the likelihood of it happening based off of my knowledge of how war in the Middle East worked is almost zero. Okay, so next one we need to get into is basically where he starts talking about how Jocko is known, not just by him, but by everyone in the SEAL community as a coward. So let's check that video out.
So Jocko was warned. He sends him out anyway, still doing daylight patrols and, and that type of stuff as far as trying to get into gunfights, trying to basically cause situations that don't need to, killing innocent people that they don't need to kill. Mark Lee ends up getting killed. Some of those guys in the platoon come back with the body, go to the funeral, and they're complaining, basically letting everybody know, hey, Jocko is basically, Chris Kyle's killing innocent people, and Jocko is basically just sending us out on daylight patrol. Stuff that we didn't do during the workup and just kind of just putting us out there. And they're starting to call him a coward. They're saying, Jocko, you're a coward because you're making a, and most of the time our task unit commanders, went out with us as far as a lot of different times because you.
All right, this one I think is important. Okay, again, he now accuses Jocko of war crimes, going out and killing innocent civilians he doesn't need to. Again, daylight patrols, movement to contact, that's what he's talking about. Super normal. So, yeah. And sometimes guys get killed in gunfights. Okay, that's the reality of war. But the big thing here I want to touch on is he says here that after Mark Lee is killed, a bunch of the guys from the team come back for a funeral and they're fucking pissed off and they're furious and they think Jocko's a coward and they think Jocko got Mark Lee killed. Where are all these guys? These are Navy SEALs, all right? This is a big thing, right? There's been no one to come forward besides him. Like, he's got all of these people that are telling him stories. No one's been willing to come forward, put their name on the line. Okay, and these are Navy SEALs. We're talking about the guys who will write a fucking book about anything, that will trash each other over anything. And 20 years has gone by and not a single one of these dudes who slided, who Jocko got their best friend killed, not one of them has come out to corroborate his story. I don't believe it, right? You can't tell me that this many people saw all of this happen and no one has said a word. Everyone has kept silent. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I'm sorry. Again, there's things that he said that I do believe, and then there's things like this that I don't believe. Because, now, if this was Delta, Ranger Battalion, Special Forces, where guys never talk about what other guys have done downrange in combat, whether they like them or not, I would be prone to potentially having more believability in the story. We're talking about Navy SEALs. They will come out and write a book about it to get famous. 100%. If there was somebody who has first-hand account, eyewitness of Jocko doing these things, they would have already wrote a book about it and they would be famous. Okay, so that is the main reason why I think this one's silly. Okay, again, not great. Again, remember, he saw none of this, okay? This is just what some people have told him happened, all right? So, now, the next one, I actually did an entire video on this when it first came out. I actually watched this on the Team House podcast and was sort of so shocked that I saw it. I saw it as a clip, so I didn't really get super deep into this whole thing. And that is the story that, and it's probably one of the most inflammatory, if not the most inflammatory claims against Jocko, and that he killed a CIA source, right? And we need to watch the clip, and I'm going to talk about that one a little bit more than I did in the other video. Let's check it out.
Jocko decides he gets shamed into going out. And of course he doesn't go out on a daylight thing. He goes on a helo insertion at night. And so when you guys know, you land, you got a brownout situation, and you're waiting for the dust to settle, see who you've alerted. You're not landing on the X. You're meeting up with somebody, a source, CIA, a source that's going to take you to the target where the bad guys are at. So the dust settles. Our source is there, and Jocko sees a guy with a slung AK, and he shoots him in the face, basically. Well, that just happens to be our source. That we're basically supposed to take us on target. So So that's what happens, on his first day. That's how he, because that's why he got the term a murderous soul, because he shot somebody because he said he was going to do it, not that he was a threat, not that he was somebody who was just trying to make a name for himself.
All right, yeah. So again, this is like a super inflammatory claim in that you're talking about not killing like an unarmed combatant, or something like happened with Gallagher where somebody detained got killed. You're talking about killing a CIA source. This is basically an allied personnel. This is a huge, huge deal. All right. There's a bunch of reasons why this story itself makes me. I know this did not happen in the way that he explains it. I know for a fact. There's no way. Okay. Now, again, this is where he calls him a coward again because he wouldn't go out. He finally gets forced to go out on a nighttime raid. And, right, the claims is there's a CIA source that's going to meet them on target and take them on the operation. Now, Jocko would have been the commander on the ground at the time. He would have known what the mission was. Okay, he would have known they were going to meet with a source and then walk on the target. All right, but he would have probably been the one who planned that out. So why, when they hit the ground and they see the person coming up to the plane, which would have been in the plan for the source to do, would he just basically shoot the person in the face? All right, doesn't make any sense. On top of that, he claims it's a CIA source. There is a 0% chance that the CIA would have just said, "Oh, you murdered our source? No big deal, Jocko. We won't say anything to anybody. We won't let Naval Special Warfare Command know what you did. It's fine." No. Okay? Anybody who's been in the military knows that's not how it works. For anybody, even in special operations. So again, this story, as it's told, there is a 0% chance this is true. Okay? Maybe there's some variation of this that potentially could be true. This story basically sounds like the telephone game has gone through 50 people and this is what the story ended up being. Okay? Not a thing. CIA doesn't let you just murder their sources with no repercussions, even if you're Jocko, who at the time is just a regular SEAL commander. He's not Jocko Willick, right? Public figure yet. So, no, not a thing. Yeah, so those are, all right, obviously a lot about Jocko, okay? And guys, I'm not some Jocko sympathizer, right? I don't do, right, any content really on SEALs personally. I don't have any skin on the game between the two of them at all. It's just going to tell you when we get to the Jocko section of the stories, none of them sound credible. None of them sound true from just a common sense standpoint, okay? Not to say that they maybe aren't, but again, I said I was going to analyze what was said and does it make sense from my perspective as someone who spent a lot of time, long time doing this job. And everything that I can see from the Jocko standpoint just seems like he's, and we're going to get into this at the end because I kind of dug through this and figured out maybe he's not as honest as he's pretending to be about why he's doing this, okay? That it just seems like he's got a bone to pick. He's got a grudge when it comes to Jocko, okay? So, again, guys, if you think those stories sound true, that to me, that tells me, one, you were never in the military. I know that for a fact. And two, you just believing those stories from someone who never saw it and just third hand heard it from the community. It's a big ask, guys. Hey, come on. Again, maybe it's true, but it sure as shit don't sound like it. Okay. Next one. And let's get into Luttrell and Red Wings. All right. So he had some pretty spicy things to say about that as well. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go too into detail into this because, again, I'm doing a Red Wing specific video where I'm going to talk about a lot of these things, but we'll just reference some things he said, and we can talk about, what seems true, what doesn't, etc. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is sort of watch his clip where he talks about Marcus Luttrell and then how that relates to Red Wings in a clip after that. So let's watch that clip first.
And their team also failed multiple, what they call, final training exercise, or, for SDV guys, it might be a little bit different, but they had failed it like 3 times, and they weren't taking their job seriously, for the most part. Marcus definitely wasn't. And now they're in Afghanistan. They get basically put on the side of a mountain. They get in their first firefight, and Marcus does exactly what, somebody who really wasn't really tested, and didn't really apply himself. He runs away from it with a fully loaded out, chest, harness and everything else, and leaves his guys behind. The situation might have been different if there was a solid team guy up there fighting with them. It might be a whole different story.
Right.
All right, so, big claims. One, Marcus Luttrell, he's brand new. He's got no training. The team was terrible. They failed validation. So what he's talking about there, before we were allowed to go to combat, guys, we have pre-mission trainings, and they usually culminate in a validation exercise where the battalion commander or whoever for your organization has to validate, check the boxes that you're ready to go to war. Okay, so him saying they failed validation 3 times. I mean, maybe in our organization, if you failed validation 3 times, like, you wouldn't be seeing combat. But again, I'm not part of the SEAL organization, so I'm not going to comment on that. That could be true. And then, of course, he makes the claims that once the gunfight starts, Marcus Luttrell is a coward, turns and runs down the hill, and doesn't fight and leaves his team to die. Now, I want to make it very specific, and even when I do the Red Wings video, I wasn't there. He wasn't there. The only person who knows what really happened on that hill that's still alive is Marcus Luttrell. However, from, things that are sort of rumor milled through soft organizations, things that have been said in the past, it does sound like that is probably the truth, okay, about what really happened. And I believe Marcus Luttrell even said that early on himself. So, again, I wasn't there. I don't know. I'm not going to even in my Red Wings video, I'm not going to get into, like, the speculation of he said, she said. But he's probably, but the other thing with this, I want to make sure, like, he doesn't have inside information on this, guys. This is, like, just well known, or, like, well speculated on, even in podcasts. Most of you know this story. Like, there's nothing special about what he's saying here, okay? So he's not divulging anything new that hasn't already been said here. But, and I forgot to put it in the clip, but he also does mention how that SEAL team was killed by only 8 Taliban combatants, all right? The likelihood, now there's all kinds of different stories of this where they were overwhelmed. You saw in the movie that there was only a few Taliban who took them down. The reality is, I do know and have a teammate personally who was in the Peck River Valley at the time when this happened, okay? And anyone who was in the Peck River Valley at the time of this knows it was a nasty, nasty fucking place to be for U.S. troops, okay? The Taliban definitely owned most of it. All right, big part of the failures of Operation Red Wings, as we'll get to it in the video, is not understanding how much control the Taliban actually had in that area and how dangerous the area was. So what I mean by that is, and also the insurgents pretty much owned the high ground. So if you see in the movie, they come from, like, the valley up into the mountains. We were actually getting attacked from the mountains into the valley most of the time. So the movie got that a little weird. But the likelihood that only 8 insurgents, after they were found out to be there, showed up, Taliban, it's really, really unlikely. And also, we have to say, if 4 SEAL team operators couldn't handle a gunfight on the high ground against 8 Taliban, he does mention about how untrained and how bad they were tactically, but they would have to be insanely untrained and bad to lose that gunfight. And again, the Peck River Valley at the time, this doesn't make sense. Okay, so we don't know. We weren't there. But I mean, even that the Peck River Valley has always been that nasty. Even the Soviets, when the Soviets were there, the Soviets lost an entire division in the Peck River Valley. Okay, that's how much of a stronghold it was. To assume just a few Taliban showed up, I think is incredibly, incredibly unlikely, which tells me that he doesn't have any inside knowledge on this story at all, and he doesn't even understand the Peck River Valley himself. So it's hard to really take anything he's saying credibility beyond like he heard it on a podcast. That's what I would say. Again, just third-party knowledge. Probably true, but again, he's not like divulging anything he's got inside information to. Let's be very clear about that, okay? He seems to have a very surface level understanding of what happened. But he also claims that he has inside information on it. So, right. All right. Now let's jump into Red Wings, because he talks about some cover up that was done with the helicopter being shot down. So let's watch that clip.
And then it's called for, a QRF. The Red Wings, gets launched in there. They get shot down by an SA-7. For some reason, the leadership didn't want, they were saying it was an RPG when it was just like, no, eyewitnesses counts on multiple different people from different helicopters and different, said, no, it wasn't an RPG. But for some reason, they have to basically, the other team guys that were on the other helicopter have to basically say it was an RPG.
Okay, so this is a really interesting claim to the story, and unfortunately, this is going to be one I know he's lying about because of the way he tells the story. All right, so he says, not that this didn't happen. I'm not saying that he's lying about the cover-up of how the helicopter was shot down and all that. I think that's been proven true. But his claims that he has eyewitness accounts of this happening, and let me break it down and explain to you on why this doesn't make sense. Okay, so the story is that initially an RPG shot down the helicopter, okay? And then he talks about how it was actually an SA-7, all right? SA-7 is a shoulder-fired man-pad anti-aircraft missile, okay? So much like an RPG, okay, very, very similar, other than it has the ability to reach out and knock down aircraft, okay? Surface-to-air missiles or platforms can come anywhere from man-pad, which means one person can shoot it from a rocket, to giant ones that can shoot down planes from miles and miles away, okay? So, yes, is the reality that a SA-7 shot down that helicopter on an RPG? Abso-fucking-lutely, right? It doesn't make any sense that an RPG shot down the helicopter. However, him having eyewitness accounts to seeing the rocket hit the helicopter, that's not a thing, okay? He says because the guys in the second aircraft, or the second Chinook, they're riding it on Chinooks, the guys in the second Chinook saw it. Okay, no, they didn't. Why? Because trust me, I rode in Chinooks my whole career. Okay, when you're sitting inside a Chinook, you're facing each other at the wall. Okay, there are sometimes little windows. Nobody is looking out the windows. Okay, nobody can see out of the Chinook other than if the tail is down. Maybe the two guys on the very rear seat, they can see out. Okay, but that secondary Chinook would have had to be the one that got shot down would have had to been the lead helicopter, which it may have been, and it would have had to been in direct sort of visual line of the first Chinook, which they don't fly that way. So my issue with that is, nobody in that helicopter could have potentially even seen the helicopter get hit, and there's a 0% chance they could have discerned the difference between a RPG fired propelled rocket and a SA-7 propelled fired rocket shot from the ground straight vertically, for the most part, at this helicopter at the speed that rocket is flying, right, and its impact into the helicopter. Nobody could see that with their own eyes. There is no eyewitness account to knowing that was a SA-7 and not an RPG. The reality is, an RPG wouldn't have had the accuracy to shoot that down. So yes, it makes sense that it was an SA-7. But to say you have eyewitness accounts of that, no, you fucking don't. Okay, it's not a thing. All right. So again, I just don't. It's hard for me when he says things that I know are lies. Okay, for me then to believe the things about Jocko. That's part of the problem too. Is like, again, I would have initially been prone to, hey, okay, if it's being said in the community. All right, maybe there's some reality to it, but when I know you're lying about multiple things, your credibility goes way, 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 way down. Okay, and that's a big problem. And then we have to get into. Okay, so why did he really come out and say this? Is it he makes the claims that, you know, he's just protecting the SEAL community and he doesn't like the turds, and you know, he wants to out them for the benefit of the SEAL community. Cool, man. Like, I get that for sure. If you want to do that, that's on you. But there's some comments made along the way throughout, if you really pay attention throughout the whole podcast, that lend to, like, maybe this is personal. Okay, and we're gonna go through those. All right. So first thing we're gonna do is talk about what happened when he was a CQD instructor. Okay, because he does have some bad blood with some things Jocko said about the CQD program. So let's watch that video.
You know, the CQD instructors, most of them all came from a mixed martial arts background of some sort, or boxing or grappling or wrestling. So it wasn't like, you know, when Jocko on his podcast, he said, hey, there was this system for a little while that was in the pipeline. You know, he misleads the public, because that system has been in the SEAL community for over 20 or 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
So longer than Jocko was actually in the Navy, CQD has been one of our most important courses that we could go through.
All right, so you see here, Deming was a CQD instructor and eventually became in charge of the program. All right, Jocko had sort of badmouthed the program on podcasts, talking about how it wasn't that effective, right, and that the guys really didn't need it and things like that. Now, you can tell that he really goes into it in some of the clips, that he really was upset about that. He really believes that this CQD program was the best program in the SEALs. And maybe it is. Maybe it was. Okay? There's a lot of martial arts, as far as he's saying, involved in it. And not only that, but it's... as far as I know, it's got a CQB element to it as well. But, like, yeah, the applicability for hand-to-hand combat martial arts in combat is, like, it's maybe there's a situation you get into. But like we always said, if I'm in a situation where I don't have my weapon and I'm by myself and I'm rolling around on the ground with an enemy combatant, it's a bad fucking day, because I'm gone, my team's gone, I'm disarmed. Like, the reality is that's not a thing. So that's why we don't put, other than for physical fitness and a little bit of training here and there, a whole lot of emphasis on martial arts. So you can tell through multiple clips that he really is irked by, and not just Jocko, by, I forget Tim Szymanski. Tim Szymanski also disparagingly, in the same area, disparagingly talks down the program too. And as you saw earlier, he really shits on Szymanski for his terrible leadership. Maybe he is a terrible leader. But my point is, you can tell he's very, very, very slighted by the comments about the CQD program, which he spent a lot of time in and he takes a lot of pride in. Okay? Not to say that he's not correct, it wasn't a great program. It's just to say, you can tell he's got a bone to pick with a few people about some of the comments. All right, and, you know, he does say that it's embarrassing to the SEAL community and some things like that, but let's watch one more clip and then we'll get into the rest of it.
You know, why am I coming so hard against these guys and exposing them? Why am I, like, you know, it's embarrassing to the SEAL community. It really is, that these guys, you know, have been able to progress their careers and that they're put on such a pedestal. But if we allow these things to go unchecked and we let these guys get away with it, it produces other guys that do very similar stuff.
So this clip, I actually am going to go back to agreeing with him. Okay, I do think that a lot of the bad apples in the SEAL community have been risen to prominence. Not saying that Jocko or any of those, but I think that he does have a good point here, in that you do want to weed out your bad apples and not let them get public prominence to stop that behavior and improve the organization as a whole. So I'm going to say I agree with him on this. Although, right, is he really weeding out the bad apples, or is he just telling stories from rumors he heard? Okay, so that's where the discrepancy for me comes in. But again, I'm going to give him credit on this. And I potentially believe that is what he thinks he's doing. Okay, I do think he thinks he's doing this for the most part for the benefit of the SEAL community. But what I don't agree with is that, you can't do this if you don't have any firsthand knowledge of this. You can't do this if this is just rumors you heard from the SEAL community. Like, that is super fucking inappropriate, right? Nobody does that, all right, in the soft community. That you don't try to out some dude because you heard he did something downrange that you didn't even see, like third-hand account. Ugh, guys, this is what I really hate about the SEAL community. Okay, I don't hate the SEAL community. I hate the fact that they come out and do this. They try to disparage each other's careers, tarnish each other's names with no proof behind it. I really, really don't approve of that. Okay, so I don't approve of what he's doing overall because, again, going through this, I was hoping that he was going to, he said at the beginning, have receipts, okay? Tell me, hey, I'm going to bring on this guy who watched Jocko do this, and he's willing to tell the truth, right? He said he has all these people, and it's been a few months, and after this podcast, he disappeared. He hasn't produced any of what he said he was going to produce. That makes that credibility boom, 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 tank into the toilet. Had he, and again, you know, if you want to come on the podcast and you can bring on an eyewitness who will say, I was on the ground on that mission. I watched with my own two eyes Jocko murder an unarmed CIA source, non-combatant, and I have witnesses that will corroborate my statements. Brother, bring him on. If you want to prove, like, if he actually is a war criminal, I'm all about it, because I don't approve of that shit either, right? I think it's terrible. I'm all about not having dudes giving a bad name to the soft community. But if you can't do that, then all you're doing is fucking spreading rumors. Okay, so that's where I'm at this point. And with that, this final clip that we're going to show shows that it's not all about Jocko being a bad leader. There's some obvious personal despisement that's going on here. So let's watch that.
Don't put him in leadership positions. Don't follow him, you know, for these reasons. And be aware that, you know, like when Jocko does a podcast, he sits there and reads from a script. When he did the one rebuttal against me, like 434.5 or whatever, him and the other guy are sitting there, they're flipping the pages at the same time, reading the same script.
All right, so when Jocko does a podcast, he sits there and reads off a script and this, trying to disparage his ability for public speaking and things like that. It's just is petty, right? You can just tell there's just pettiness in his voice. There's pettiness in his feelings towards Jocko. I don't know. Again, I don't know. I know that Jocko has slighted him with comments, like he's made that clear. I don't know the whole backstory about it, right? But there is a personal element to this. Having watched all of the content, that is very, very clear. But, you know, I guess we'll have to see. So, I don't think anything's going to obviously come of it, right? Again, Jocko, like, again, we went over the defamation law. There's nothing that can be done about it anyway. All you can really do is ignore it. And again, all these receipts, all this proof, all this that was supposedly going to come forward, where is it, dude? Because at this point, again, it just looks like you're just spreading rumors, man. And it's disappointing, right? Because, again, like I said, I despise guys who come out and shit talk and spread rumors about other guys' service, and especially at war, okay? If you're going to call somebody a war criminal, you have to back it up. Like, with real receipts, not with, oh, well, it's well known in the community. That ain't going to fucking cut it. Not around here, okay? Now, so what's my conclusion, right? And again, I started this video off for a reason, telling you guys that my initial bias is that the SEAL organization has had a lot of fuck-ups. I've been very critical of him before. I would be very likely to believe what he has to say if it made sense, right? If the stories actually, to me, and my background, held a lot of credibility or weight, and they don't. I'm sorry. Like, you can put in the comment section about how you hate Jocko and how you think it's true. That's fine, okay? But for me, and my personal perspective, combing through this deeply, I don't see it, guys. It seems just like somebody who's got a personal slighted against someone, and right, he thought he was going to come and unveil all these truths that are just fucking rumors in the community, as far as I can tell. Because again, the biggest thing for me is it's the Navy SEAL community. And the fact no other person over 20 fucking years, and these are major, major accusations, no one else came forward for notoriety, for glory, to write books, to get famous. It's been all kept under lock and key for everyone but him. I'm sorry. I think there's a 0% chance of that. So, because SEALs eat their own, and they have no problem throwing each other under the bus for fame. Okay, they would definitely do it to Jocko if they could. If this many people knew about this, there'd be tons of people chomping at the bits to come out and get their 15 minutes of fame over it. Okay, that's the truth. Okay, so, yeah, guys. Again, we're gonna do a video where we dive more deeper into Red Wings, obviously with the type of stuff that we talked about there. But obviously that takes a video in itself. But again, yeah, guys. Again, I have nothing against Eric Deming at all. I don't know him personally. I don't know Jocko. I don't know Chris Kyle. I don't know Luttrell. I don't know any of these people. I actually, interestingly enough, like I got no skin in the game, right? In this one at all, right? I'm not some big fanboy of Jocko. I don't know him. But I looked at this again from actually even a little bit biased towards his side to begin with, right? And if I'm a little bit biased his way and I end up all the way over here, I think that says a lot. Okay, so again, you guys are more than free to believe whatever you want, right? If you are the type of person that's willing to believe third-party, uncorroborated statements about somebody else, I don't think that's great, and I think you should approach the world a little bit differently, right? Especially being an American. But who knows? Again, the thing about a lot of these stories is we're never going to know the truth, right? All we know is, unless enough people come out and actually firsthand account, eyewitness, I saw this, and he says I saw this, and he says I also saw this, right? Sure, but that's not what happened, and that's not what's gonna happen. Because again, if you want to be the ones to come do it on my podcast, I got no problem taking down real war criminals, right? It'll make this podcast famous, but yeah, it's not going to happen, right? Obviously. So, yeah, guys, hope you found this one interesting, right? And, leave your feelings about it in the comment section. And, yeah, that's going to do it for this one. I will catch you on the next one.